You gotta pardon me. I've been listening to Young Jeezy all morning. Thug Motivation 101. This is more than words. This is more than raps. This is the street. I am the trap. Standing ovation. You already know my slogan, man. You already know what my slogan is. Let me just tell y'all this as I tuck myself in warm. I am a Cleveland Browns fan. I don't have no other teams. I ain't got a fallback team. I ain't got a team in case they move. I like them. I ain't got a team that I can just pull up. I root for 3 teams: the Cam McKinley Bulldogs, the Ohio Bobcats, and the Cleveland Browns.
The drama surrounding the Cleveland Browns just keeps getting crazy, and you're going to be shocked by what I'm about to reveal. Dillon Gabriel appears to have been completely silenced by owner Jimmy Haslam after his girlfriend vented about the company on social media. We are discussing a total disappearance, such as Dillon Gabriel joining the Witness Protection Program, or a complete blackout of the media. Additionally, the timing is highly suspicious. There are a lot of conspiracy theories out there. At last, the media is beginning to inquire. Additionally, the entire situation is revealing the Cleveland Browns organization's true dysfunction. Wait until you hear about the behind-the-scenes activities involving Dillon Gabriel, Kevin Stefanski, and the Browns front office if you thought the Cam Robinson blocking incident was awful. Since context is crucial in this situation, allow me to take you back to the beginning of this whole mess. The NFL was taken aback when the Cleveland Browns selected Dillon Gabriel and Shadur Sanders in the same draft class. Why would you select 2 quarterbacks in the draft? The majority of teams have a well-defined strategy, a hierarchy, and an idea of who their franchise quarterback will be. However, Cleveland did what it does best. From day one, they caused confusion and mayhem. When head coach Kevin Stefanski made the start of Dillon Gabriel over Shadur Sanders, it became even more strange. Even so, by almost every measurable metric, Shadur is the more gifted, more polished, and more NFL-ready quarterback. It was obvious right away that Dillon Gabriel was Kevin Stefanski's man. Dillon was at the top of the coach's list of favorites for reasons that no one outside the organization could completely comprehend. Shadur was not receiving practice reps for the first team. During games, he received the incorrect play cards. Despite being a high-priced draft pick who ought to have been the team's future, he was essentially treated like a backup quarterback. In the meantime, Dillon Gabriel was given every chance to establish himself as the starter, including first-team reps. Dillon Gabriel isn't Shadur Sanders, which is the issue. He lacks the football IQ, pocket presence, arm talent, and capacity to process information at lightning-fast speeds. All of that didn't matter to Kevin Stefanski, though, because Dillon was his man. This is where things start to get really crazy. Dillon Gabriel's girlfriend went on TikTok and let loose after deciding she had had enough of the Browns organization ruining everything. She criticized the organization, revealed dysfunction, discussed Dillon's treatment, and generally revealed the truth about what was actually going on within the Cleveland Browns facility. With millions of views and a flurry of social media discussion about the Browns' quarterback situation and organizational ineptitude, her post went viral. Media members, NFL fans, and commentators began sharing her videos and inquiring about the specifics of what was happening in Cleveland. Then a highly suspicious event occurred. Dillon Gabriel vanished entirely from the public eye. We are discussing a complete media shutdown. No press conferences, no interviews, no locker rooms, no posts on social media, nothing. Dillon Gabriel seems to have vanished from the public eye. According to the Browns' official account, Dillon was listed as injured for their most recent game and suffered some sort of injury. The strange thing about that explanation, though, is this. When Dillon Gabriel wasn't even playing, how exactly did he sustain his injury? Since Shadur Sanders took over as the starter and began dominating opposing defenses, he has been sitting on the bench. So, how, when, and where did this enigmatic injury happen? The Browns organization has been suspiciously evasive about the specifics, which has only increased conjecture that there is more going on here. This is where things get really interesting, so take a moment to consider the timeline. The girlfriend of Dillon Gabriel shares her viral TikTok videos that reveal Browns' dysfunction. Dillon Gabriel vanishes entirely from all media outlets in a matter of days. A mysterious injury that no one can explain appears out of nowhere. Previously unable to stop talking about Dillon and justifying his choice to start him over Shadur, Kevin Stefanski has now stopped talking about his ex. No public remarks, no support, and no advocacy for Dillon when the questions began to surface. It's radio silence everywhere. There's a deafening silence. The way Shadur Sanders was treated as the backup quarterback is comparable to this treatment. Reporters questioned Shadur's mindset, asked him how he felt about being third string, and put microphones in his face after every practice when he wasn't starting. Shadur was completely accessible to the media, and he managed it with remarkable maturity and professionalism. Shadur was under so much pressure and media attention that his sister, Shalomi Sanders, had to take over and defend him on social media, urging everyone to stop interfering and let her brother do his job. Dillon Gabriel, however, received the exact opposite treatment. Dillon disappeared as if he were in the witness protection program the instant his girlfriend came forward and embarrassed the organization. Speaking out about this issue, former Browns players are confirming what many have long suspected. They made it clear on a recent show with former Cleveland players that Dillon Gabriel was Kevin Stefanski's guy, not the organization's or the front office's choice, but the head coach's pet project. "That's the part right there that we all got to remember," remarked a former player. Stefanski had a thing for Dillon. That's a damning statement because it shows that the head coach, who is playing favorites rather than making decisions based on talent and what was best for the team, was solely responsible for the dysfunction at the quarterback position. The situation becomes even more intriguing at this point because Mary Kay Cabot, a member of the Cleveland media, has been seriously manipulating events in an attempt to salvage Kevin Stefanski's reputation. In the media, Mary Kay has been one of Stefanski's most outspoken supporters, and her recent remarks endorsing him are drawing criticism everywhere. She has been claiming that Stefanski never had a good quarterback to work with, which is completely ridiculous given that Shadur Sanders has been there the entire time. By arguing that Dillon Gabriel's failure wasn't Stefanski's fault, she is attempting to absolve him of any accountability for the quarterback chaos, conveniently disregarding the fact that Stefanski chose to start Dillon, draft him, and give him every chance rather than selecting the clearly superior Shadur Sanders. Mary Kay went on a lengthy defense of Kevin Stefanski during a recent appearance on the Ultimate Cleveland Browns show, which led to her being ridiculed on social media. She discussed how Browns owner Jimmy Haslam implied that Stefanski shouldn't be held accountable for failing with Dillon Gabriel by saying at the start of the season that they wouldn't hold the coach's feet to the fire because they were trying to figure out their quarterback situation. Ignoring the fact that Stefanski started the wrong quarterback, she said she wished we could have seen what he could do with a good quarterback situation. Olympic gold medals would be awarded for the mental acrobatics needed to make these arguments. Mary Kay attempted to give Kevin Stefanski credit for the team's recent strong play, claiming that the players were still battling for their coach. However, this is the fact that she and other members of the Browns media refuse to accept. For Kevin Stefanski, the team isn't working hard. Shadur Sanders finally got his chance, took over as the starting quarterback, and is demonstrating to everyone why he ought to have been the starter from the beginning, which is why they are playing hard. Having the right quarterback on the field for the first time has had a greater impact on that team's energy than the head coach. However, Mary Kay and other Browns insiders are attempting to create the impression that Stefanski should be given credit for the team's improved performance, even though it was his refusal to start Shadur that initially caused the issues. Mary Kay Cabot has been completely destroyed by social media for standing up for Kevin Stefanski. The degree of protection she is giving the coach goes beyond what any impartial journalist would do, leading some to wonder if she has a personal relationship with him. Every time Stefanski receives criticism, Mary Kay is there to offer justifications, defenses, and explanations. She won't hold him responsible for his awful choices about the quarterback position. She refuses to admit that it was organizational malpractice to start Dillon Gabriel over Shadur Sanders. Furthermore, she won't acknowledge that Shadur's growth has been harmed and that the Browns may have lost a whole season as a result of Kevin Stefanski's obstinacy and partiality. Equally troubling is the Browns' media members' refusal to confront Mary Kay when she makes these absurd claims on programs like The Ultimate Cleveland Browns Show. These analysts will discuss how Shadur should have been launched sooner rather than later in their own podcasts and social media posts. However, they become passive observers and allow Mary Kay to control the narrative without any resistance when they are in front of the cameras. It's not real journalism. This analysis is cowardly. Additionally, it is harming Browns supporters, who should receive fair coverage of their team, rather than disinformation meant to shield the front office and head coach. Since Dillon Gabriel's disappearance is the most significant story that the Cleveland media is unwilling to discuss, let's return to him. If Dillon is indeed hurt, the Browns ought to be open and honest about the nature of the injury, how it occurred, and how long it will take to heal. However, their purposeful ambiguity implies that there is more to this tale. The most plausible explanation is that Dillon Gabriel was told to keep quiet and avoid the spotlight by Browns owner Jimmy Haslam after his girlfriend's social media posts embarrassed the team. As a hands-on owner who gets involved in football operations, Haslam is well known for not putting up with a girlfriend sharing personal details about his billion-dollar franchise on TikTok. Consider it from Jimmy Haslam's point of view. Dillon Gabriel's girlfriend is out there telling the world that the Browns organization is dysfunctional, on top of the intense criticism he's already been receiving for his team's performance, the quarterback situation, and whether Kevin Stefanski should be fired. From the perspective of the owner, that is unacceptable. Haslam most likely intervened and made it apparent that Dillon needed to stop talking to his girlfriend and that he needed to stay out of the spotlight until this whole thing was resolved. Dillon is using the enigmatic injury as a convenient pretext to avoid answering awkward questions from reporters. The situation's overall irony is nearly unbearable. In order to make Dillon Gabriel his starting quarterback, Kevin Stefanski put up a fierce fight, gave him every benefit, and openly backed him, despite the fact that Dillon wasn't the solution. However, Stefanski totally abandoned Dillon as soon as things went wrong and his girlfriend revealed some organizational dysfunction. Where is the loyalty? Where's the help? Dillon is still part of this team, and we value him. Where is the head coach speaking? Since Kevin Stefanski only helps players when it suits him and doesn't jeopardize his own job security, it's nowhere to be found. The double standard that the Browns applied to their two quarterbacks is also made clear by this circumstance. Shadur Sanders was constantly under media scrutiny while he was the backup. He was questioned about his attitude, whether or not he was a team player, and received criticism for everything from his performance to his well-known last name. However, Shadur handled everything with poise and professionalism, never voiced complaints in public, continued to work, and disproved everyone's doubts when he eventually had his chance. Even though Dillon Gabriel's girlfriend's social media posts might have caused major issues for the organization, he is protected, concealed, and shielded from any true accountability. Everything you need to know about how the Browns are handling this situation is revealed by the fact that we haven't seen Dillon Gabriel in the locker room, heard him speak to the media, or received any genuine updates on his status. If Dillon remains silent and out of sight for a sufficient amount of time, they hope that people will move on to other stories and forget about his girlfriend's TikTok videos. Simply put, it's damage control. The Browns are making an effort to steer the conversation and ensure that no more humiliating details about what's actually taking place within their facility are revealed. You can read between the lines of what former Browns players are saying, even though they are being extremely cautious with their words. They acknowledge that roster selections and playing time distribution were influenced by personal preferences when they refer to Dillon as Stefanski's guy. There is an underlying sense of annoyance when they talk about the quarterback situation because Shadur Sanders, who is more talented, wasn't given the chance sooner. NFL locker rooms are familiar to these former players. They are aware of organizational dynamics, and it is evident to them that the Browns handled this situation poorly from the start. What happens to Dillon Gabriel and Kevin Stefanski in the future is now the more important question. According to a number of reports, Stefanski may be coaching his final games in Cleveland. Despite having 2 Coach of the Year awards under his belt, Stefanski may be fired at the end of the season, according to national reporters like Adam Schefter of ESPN. Because Dillon Gabriel was Stefanski's guy rather than the organization's, the smart money says that if Stefanski is fired, Dillon will also be gone. Kevin Stefanski's pet project quarterback, who failed miserably and whose girlfriend caused social media organizational headaches, is not something any new head coach will want to inherit. In actuality, Dillon Gabriel's NFL career may have ended before it even started. When Shadur Sanders got his chance, he wasn't good enough to beat him for the starting position. His girlfriend's social media posts caused off-field distractions. Despite not playing, he is now mysteriously injured, and his total disappearance from the public eye suggests that the organization no longer wants to work with him. That is not a formula for a long and prosperous NFL career. Dillon may turn out to be one of those cautionary tales about a player who was supported by the wrong people in the wrong circumstances at the wrong time. This whole thing must be extremely frustrating for Shadur Sanders. Despite the fact that things have finally turned out well for him, he had to witness a less gifted quarterback take advantage of every chance that was rightfully his. He had to contend with a head coach who didn't give him a fair chance and didn't believe in him. He had to get past media narratives that cast doubt on his eligibility for the NFL and organizational dysfunction. Shadur persevered, worked diligently, maintained his professionalism, and bided his time. When the time came, he took advantage of it and disproved everyone. That is the hallmark of a future franchise quarterback and a true professional. The coverage of this story by Cleveland media differs greatly from that of the national media. National analysts, such as those on NFL Network, ESPN, and Fox Sports, have been far more inclined to praise Shadur's performance and criticize the Browns for their poor quarterback management. The Ultimate Cleveland Browns Show and Mary Kay Cabot, two local Cleveland media outlets, are still attempting to interfere on Kevin Stefanski's behalf and offer justifications for organizational shortcomings. You can see why Browns supporters are so irritated with their local coverage from that disconnect. They are not receiving truthful journalism. They are receiving propaganda that is intended to shield the ruling class. When compared to other backup quarterbacks in the league, Dillon Gabriel's silence is particularly telling. Even when they're not playing, the majority of backups continue to be available to the media, publicly support their teammates, and uphold a professional image. However, Dillon has completely disappeared, which implies that either the organization has ordered him to keep quiet, or that he is too ashamed of the way things have turned out to want to answer any questions. In any case, he and the Browns organization that let this happen don't look good. Now that Shadur is playing well, it's amazing how fast the story has changed. Shadur's NFL readiness was a topic of debate among Browns media just a few weeks ago. Others, including Mary Kay, were doubting his ability to keep up with the fast-paced nature of the professional game. There were doubts about his ability to perform at the NFL level. However, all of those worries have vanished now that he's truly making plays on the field, because they weren't legitimate worries in the first place. They served as justifications for Kevin Stefanski's selection of Dillon Gabriel over the quarterback who was clearly more skilled. The owner apparently no longer believes that Kevin Stefanski can handle the quarterback situation, as evidenced by the fact that Jimmy Haslam had to intervene and silence Dillon Gabriel. Haslam would let Stefanski deal with these problems on his own if he had faith in his head coach. Instead, the owner is becoming directly involved, which is typically fatal for NFL coaches. Ownership shows that they don't trust the coaching staff to handle things appropriately when they begin micromanaging media availability and personnel decisions. The Browns are currently in that exact position. Assuming Kevin Stefanski is gone for the upcoming season, the new head coach will take over an intriguing situation. Shadur Sanders, a young quarterback with exceptional tools who is finally getting his chance to shine, will be on one side. Dillon Gabriel, on the other hand, will stand in for everything that went wrong with the previous administration, assuming he is still on the roster. That baggage will not be desired by any new coach. In order for Dillon Gabriel and the Browns to move on from this botched experiment, it is highly likely that he will be traded or released this offseason. All of this teaches us that personal prejudice and partiality have no place in professional sports. Kevin Stefanski lost his team important time in Shadur Sanders' development because he allowed his preference for Dillon Gabriel to cloud his judgment. He put his guy's loyalty ahead of the organization's best interests. Dillon and Stefanski are now both bearing the consequences of that error. Shadur Sanders is doing very well. The group is performing better. In retrospect, the previous quarterback controversy appears even more absurd. The intrigue behind the scenes, which we're only now beginning to discover, is what makes this story even more captivating. The TikTok posts made by Dillon Gabriel's girlfriend were only the beginning. The way the Browns have managed expectations, interacted with players, and operated their quarterback room has obviously been extremely dysfunctional. Serious issues with leadership and culture are indicated when employees feel compelled to voice their frustrations publicly, even if indirectly, on social media. The Browns organization must take lessons from this catastrophe and ensure that it doesn't occur again. This entails selecting a head coach who will base choices on criteria rather than whims. It entails fostering an environment where the top players perform, regardless of who likes them or who drafted them. Instead of fostering fictitious competition, it entails being truthful with players about their roles and opportunities. It also entails having strong enough leadership to make difficult choices when something isn't working, rather than obstinately sticking with the incorrect decision out of pride or ego. Watching this whole saga has been exhausting for Brown supporters. They have witnessed their team squander precious time by starting games with the incorrect quarterback. They have witnessed public instances of organizational dysfunction. They have had to put up with media personalities like Mary Kay Cabot defending the individuals who caused the mess. Additionally, they've had to wait longer than necessary for their franchise quarterback, Shadur Sanders, to finally get his chance. Shadur's success as a player does not justify the organizational shortcomings that brought the situation to this point. One of the most bizarre narratives of this NFL season will continue to be Dillon Gabriel's disappearance. Under mysterious circumstances, a quarterback who was starting games only a few weeks ago has now completely disappeared from the public eye. On social media, his girlfriend revealed organizational issues. He has been deserted by his head coach, who supported him. He seems to have been coerced into silence by the owner, and his future in the NFL is now seriously uncertain. It serves as a warning about the consequences of being the wrong player in the wrong circumstance at the wrong moment.